The courtroom was silent. On one side sat Marcus Holloway, a billionaire CEO sneering next to his pristine mistress Clarissa. They were seconds from victory, about to leave his wife with nothing. Then the grand oak doors swung open. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Amelia, the poor wife. Looking exhausted, pushing a cheap double stroller. The mistress scoffed. She actually brought the props. Marcus demanded the judge remove them. But the judge, Evelyn Hayes, simply looked at the sleeping twins, then at a sealed file on her desk, and gave a tiny, dangerous smile. The secret she was about to expose wasn't just about the twins. It was about the devastating lie the mistress was hiding under her own designer dress. The air in courtroom 3B of the Los Angeles Superior Court was worth more than most people's homes. It was a sterile, refrigerated atmosphere, smelling faintly of expensive leather and ambition. Presiding over it all was Judge Evelyn Hayes, a woman whose sharp gaze was known to dismantle high-powered attorneys before they'd even finished their opening statements. On the petitioner's side sat Marcus Holloway, CEO of Vanguard Developments, a man who didn't just wear a suit, he weaponized it. His $24,000 Patek Philippe watch caught the fluorescent light as he impatiently tapped his fingers. Beside him, his lawyer, Mr. Blevin, a man with the smooth, reptilian features of a corporate predator, arranged his files with predatory precision. In the front row of the gallery just behind Marcus sat Clarissa Dupont. She was a vision in a cream-colored Chanel suit, her blonde hair pulled into a severe, elegant chignon. She was herself a high-powered attorney from the rival firm Sloan & Pierce, but today she was playing the role of the supportive, wronged partner. Her hand rested with deliberate maternal grace on the small, barely there swell of her stomach. She was pregnant, and her entire posture screamed victory. On the respondent's side, there was just one person, Amelia Holloway. She was not in rags. That would have been too theatrical. Instead, she was poor in the way wealth defines it. Her simple navy blue dress was clean, but had seen better years. Her shoes were practical flats. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, highlighting the dark, exhausted circles under her eyes. She clutched a worn manila envelope in her lap, her only defense. She had no lawyer. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. Judge Hayes entered, and the proceedings began. Blevin stood his voice echoing with practiced, expensive empathy. "Your Honor, we are here for a simple dissolution. Mr. Holloway has, with great pain, filed for divorce on the grounds of grievous infidelity." He paused, letting the words hang. Clarissa dabbed at a non-existent tear with a silk handkerchief. While Mr. Holloway would be well within his rights to sue for damages emotional and reputational, Blevin continued, he is generously seeking only a summary judgment. He wishes to dissolve this union, provide a statutory minimum severance, and move on with his life. He asks for nothing, save for his freedom from a marriage built on deceit. Judge Hayes stared her face, impassive. "Deceit, Mr. Blevin. Those are strong words. I assume you have proof?" "We do, Your Honor. Irrefutable." Blevin picked up a thick, sealed document. "We present Exhibit A, a certified notarized medical declaration from the Beverly Hills Fertility Clinic, signed by the esteemed Dr. Alistair Finch. This document proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that my client, Mr. Holloway, is medically sterile, and has been for several years." A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Clarissa looked directly at Amelia, a small venomous smile playing on her lips. The respondent, Mrs. Holloway, Blevin said, gesturing to Amelia as if she were a piece of unpleasant furniture, has claimed her recent conception resulted in twins. This is, of course, a biological impossibility, a desperate, fraudulent attempt to secure a payout. Therefore, Blevin concluded, we ask the court to nullify any and all claims Mrs. Holloway might make on the Holloway estate based on this profound act of fraud. Judge Hayes turned her gaze to Amelia. Mrs. Holloway, you are here without counsel. Do you have a response to this very serious allegation? Amelia's voice was quiet, but it didn't tremble. Yes, Your Honor. She stood clutching her envelope. He's lying. Blevin let out an exasperated sigh. Lying, madam, this is a sworn affidavit from one of the top specialists in the country. Are you accusing Dr. Finch of perjury? No, Amelia said, her eyes fixed on the judge. I'm accusing him of it. Those children, my children, they are his. Marcus himself finally spoke, his voice a low, dangerous growl. She's delusional. She knows I'm sterile. We've known for years. Your Honor, Blevin interjected, this is a desperate delay tactic. The respondent has no evidence, no counsel, no case. We move for a default judgment. Judge Hayes looked at Amelia. Mrs. Holloway, you must present a legal argument. A simple, he's lying, will not suffice in the face of medical evidence. I have my own evidence, Amelia said, holding up the manila envelope. But I didn't know how to submit it. He froze all our assets. I have $42 in my bank account. I couldn't hire a lawyer. I couldn't even afford to file a motion. Pathetic, Marcus muttered. Clarissa smirked. Blevin smiled, sensing the kill. Your Honor, she has nothing. We rest our case. The judge looked as if she were about to speak, to perhaps grant the motion and end the hearing. And then the grand courtroom doors creaked open. The sound, a heavy creak of old oiled wood, made everyone turn. Framed in the doorway was a young woman in scrubs, looking terrified. It was Amelia's younger sister, Chloe. She wasn't alone. She was pushing a large, cumbersome, and clearly second-hand double stroller. The courtroom's silence thickened, becoming heavy and suffocating. Chloe hesitantly pushed the stroller over the threshold and up the aisle, the squeak of a bad wheel echoing in the cavernous room. Inside the stroller, wrapped in simple cotton blankets, were two sleeping infants. Marcus Holloway went rigid. His face, which had been a mask of bored arrogance, flushed a deep, violent crimson. What is this? He seethed, rising halfway from his chair. Clarissa shot to her feet, her voice a sharp, sudden shriek that shattered the decorum. Your Honor, this is an outrage. This is harassment. She's brought props. Marcus found his voice, turning his rage on the judge. Get those things out of here. This is a court of law, not a daycare. This is a circus. I demand they be removed. Blevin was instantly at his side. Your Honor, I must strenuously object. The respondent is turning this hearing into a media stunt. This is a blatant attempt to manipulate the court and cause my client emotional distress. Judge Hayes slammed her gavel. The sharp crack silenced the room. Silence! Her voice was a whip. Everyone will be seated. Now. Marcus and Blevin sat. Clarissa, trembling with indignation, slowly lowered herself back to her seat. The judge looked at Chloe, who was frozen by the respondent's table. You may remain, she said calmly. Park the stroller beside your sister. This small act of validation seemed to drain the blood from Marcus's face. He looked at Judge Hayes as if seeing her for the first time, not as a facilitator, but as an opponent. Amelia placed a trembling hand on the stroller. She looked at her husband. They are not things. Marcus, they are not props. They are your son and your daughter, Leo and Luna. Marcus let out a short, barking laugh. It was a terrible sound, devoid of humor. My children, Amelia, have you lost your mind? We have proof, certified, irrefutable. You can't just manifest paternity by walking into a courtroom. It's pathetic. Clarissa leaned forward, whispering just loud enough for the first few rows to hear. So desperate, it's truly sad. She needs psychiatric help. Amelia ignored them both. Her gaze was locked on Judge Hayes. "Your Honor," Amelia said, her voice finding a new, harder edge. "I told you I had evidence. I have it here." She held up the manila envelope. Blevin scoffed. "And what precisely is in that envelope, Mrs. Holloway? A greeting card, a horoscope, a mother's intuition. It will not stand against a notarized declaration from the Beverly Hills Fertility Clinic." "Bailiff," Judge Hayes said, cutting off the lawyer. "Retrieve the document from Mrs. Holloway." The bailiff took the simple envelope from Amelia's hand and passed it to the judge. The courtroom held its breath. Marcus watched a flicker of genuine uncertainty in his eyes for the first time. What could she possibly have? Judge Hayes slid her finger under the flap and opened it. She pulled out a single folded sheaf of papers. She read. The courtroom watched her face. Her eyebrows, perfectly arched, shot up toward her hairline. She read the document again. She looked down at the twins, then at Marcus, then back at the document. "Mr. Blevin," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Your Honor," Blevin said, sensing a shift in the wind. "You submitted Exhibit A, the sterility report from Dr. Alistair Finch. The date on this report is October 15th of last year." "That is correct, Your Honor," Blevin said, puffing his chest. "Ironclad." "And Mrs. Holloway," the judge continued, "has submitted this." She held up the paper. "A prenatal paternity test from Genesis Diagnostics, dated February 10th of last year. 9 months before your test, Mr. Holloway." The judge let the silence stretch. "This test," she said, her eyes boring into Marcus, "states that there is a 99.9999% probability that Marcus Holloway is the biological father of the twins." Pandemonium. The courtroom exploded. Blevin was on his feet, his reptilian smoothness gone, his face mottled. "Objection. Objection. It's inadmissible. Foundation chain of custody speculation," he stammered, throwing legal jargon at the wall to see what would stick. Marcus was chalk white. "She faked it. That's impossible. She stole my DNA. It's fabricated. She's a con artist." Amelia finally turned to look at him, her eyes flashing with a year's worth of stored pain. "I didn't steal it, Marcus. I used your electric toothbrush, the one you threw in the trash when you bought your new gold-plated one. I sent it in with my own blood sample when I was 10 weeks pregnant." She looked back at the judge. "I knew, Your Honor. I knew he would try something like this. He grew cold the moment I told him I was pregnant. He started accusing me. He said I was trapping him. I knew I had to protect myself. I had to protect them." Blevin seized on this. "A toothbrush. Your Honor, this is junk science. It's a novelty kit. It has no legal standing. Our exhibit is a medical procedure conducted in a sterile environment, signed, sealed, and notarized. You must throw this out." Judge Hayes held up a hand. "Calm yourself, Mr. Blevin. You are incorrect. A DNA test from a certified lab like Genesis Diagnostics is absolutely admissible regardless of how the sample was obtained, as long as the chain of custody from the lab is sound. And this report," she tapped the paper, "is fully certified." She fixed Blevin with a stare. "So we find ourselves with a paradox. We have 2 contradictory and legally admissible pieces of evidence. One says Mr. Holloway is the father. The other says he cannot be." She leaned forward. "One of these documents, gentlemen, is a lie." Marcus was shaking now, his fury warring with a new creeping panic. "Hers is the lie. Mine is from a doctor. I want her sanctioned. I want her charged with perjury for submitting a faked document." Clarissa, for the first time, looked truly nervous. Her perfectly manicured hand was no longer resting lovingly on her stomach. It was gripping the wooden gallery railing so hard her knuckles were white. Their plan was contingent on Marcus's sterility being an established fact. This complicated everything. A serious matter indeed, Judge Hayes mused, looking at the two documents laid out before her. A direct conflict of facts. A test from Genesis Diagnostics versus a report from Dr. Finch's clinic. She looked directly at Marcus Holloway, and her eyes were like chips of ice. "Unless, Mr. Holloway," she said, her voice dropping, "you are lying about which document is true. Perhaps you aren't sterile. Perhaps you bribed Dr. Finch to create a fraudulent report to escape your marital duties." "I did not," Marcus blustered, but the accusation hung in the air. Bribing a doctor was exactly the kind of thing people believed he would do, or... The judge continued, her voice silky smooth. "Perhaps both documents are true." Blevin and Marcus exchanged a confused look. "Your Honor," Blevin said slowly, "that's not possible." "Oh, but it is, Mr. Blevin," Judge Hayes said. "And that is where the real story is. The story your client so desperately tried to conceal." She held up the two reports. "Look at the dates. They are the key. Mrs. Holloway's paternity test, February 10th. The twins were conceived in late January. Mr. Holloway's sterility test, October 15th. The twins were born in September." She let the timeline sink in. "This means," the judge said, her voice ringing with judicial clarity, "Mr. Holloway was fertile in February and sterile in October. Dead." Silence. Marcus's face crumpled. He understood in that microsecond exactly where this was going. He had been so clever, so sure of his infallible plan, that he'd missed the one detail that would destroy him. Blevin, still processing, flipped through his own file. But, Your Honor, Mr. Holloway's affidavit, it clearly states, has been sterile for years." "Exactly, Mr. Blevin," Judge Hayes said, her voice turning to steel. "Mr. Holloway, you just committed perjury. In my courtroom, you signed a sworn affidavit stating you have been sterile for years when your own submitted evidence shows you were only tested last October. You lied under oath." This was the moment. The click of the trap. Marcus Holloway was cornered. It was a misstatement." He stammered, his eyes darting between the judge and his lawyer. "A turn of phrase, I meant. I am sterile. I assumed it had been for years. You assumed..." Judge Hayes's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You built your entire case, your claim of infidelity, your attempt to leave your wife and two newborn children destitute on an assumption. You filed a false report under penalty of perjury. In this state, Mr. Holloway, that is a felony." Blevin, seeing his retainer evaporating, tried frantically to do damage control. "Your Honor, a simple clerical error in the affidavit's wording. My client was emotionally distressed by his wife's betrayal. We can amend the filing." "Save it, Mr. Blevin," Judge Hayes snapped. "You'd be wise to stop talking, because, you see, it gets infinitely worse for your client." She turned to her clerk. "When I reviewed the preliminary filings this morning, I saw this glaring discrepancy in the dates. It made me curious. So I took the liberty of subpoenaing the full medical file from Dr. Alistair Finch's clinic, not just the convenient one-page summary you provided, Mr. Blevin." Blevin went pale. Marcus looked as if he was going to be physically sick right there on the polished floor. "And Dr. Finch's private sealed notes," the judge continued, reading from a new file, "are deeply illuminating. Mr. Holloway, you didn't just wake up sterile in October. You were diagnosed with a severe rapid onset condition. Specifically, she read from the file, catastrophic bilateral testicular failure. Due to an aggressive, unmanaged varicocele you apparently ignored for more than a decade, despite medical advice. She looked up, her gaze pinning Marcus to his chair. Dr. Finch's notes state, and I quote, "Patient's sperm viability was plummeting. He was, in my professional opinion, in the final days, possibly hours of his reproductive viability, when he claims to have last been with his wife." The test in October merely confirmed what had already concluded total and permanent sterility. Judge Hayes then turned the full force of her attention to Amelia, her expression softening for the first time. "Mrs. Holloway," she said, her voice gentle, "it seems your twins weren't just children. They were a 1 in a billion miracle, conceived in the absolute final window of your husband's fertility." Amelia's hands flew to her mouth, and a ragged sob tore from her throat. It wasn't a sob of sadness, but of vindication. All those months he had gaslighted her, calling her a whore, a liar, making her doubt her own reality. And all this time the truth was this: the courtroom was buzzing. "He framed her," someone whispered loudly. Marcus just stared, his multi-billion-dollar empire, his reputation, his entire sense of self crumbling. He was the father. He knew he was fertile when they were conceived. He knew he was sterile now, and he had still tried to brand her an adulterer to get out of paying for his own children. His entire case, his entire narrative of being the wronged husband had just been officially, publicly, and humiliatingly obliterated. All eyes were on Marcus. All except for Amelia's. She was watching Clarissa. Clarissa DuPont was standing her face, a mask of chalky disbelief and incandescent rage. She was not looking at Marcus. She was looking at Judge Hayes. This is a violation!" She shrieked, her voice cracking all pretense of the graceful, supportive partner gone. "A gross violation of privacy. You can't release a person's private medical data like that." Judge Hayes leveled a gaze at her. "I can, Ms. DuPont, when it is central to a case of perjury and fraudulent claims in my courtroom. You are an officer of the court. You of all people should know that. Sit. Down." "No!" Clarissa screamed. He told me he was sterile. He said it was impossible. He promised me." Her mind was clearly spinning, working frantically. She wasn't angry for Marcus. She was angry at him, her entire plan, her future. And then, like a freight train in a tunnel, the second more horrifying realization hit her. It was so palpable the entire courtroom saw the moment it landed. If Marcus became permanently sterile, last October, her pregnancy, she had proudly claimed 3 months pregnant. It was now November. Her hand, which had been gripping the railing, flew to her stomach. It was not a loving, maternal caress. It was a gesture of pure, abject horror. She slowly turned her head, her eyes wide to look at Marcus. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus, finally understanding the new immediate source of her panic, looked back at her, his expression desperate. "Clarissa, wait. Don't." "You knew." Clarissa DuPont screamed a sound of pure animalistic rage that echoed off the marble walls. "You knew you were sterile, and you let me believe." Blevin, his own career now circling the drain, weakly pleaded, "Your Honor, order. Please, order." Clarissa laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "He lied to me. He's sterile. He's been sterile for a year, and he's... She stopped, choking on her own words. But it was too late. Everyone in the room, the judge, the reporters, the clerks, and Amelia had done the simple, devastating math. Judge Hayes leaned into her microphone. "Ms. DuPont, are you admitting in open court that your current pregnancy is not Mr. Holloway's?" Clarissa had completely, totally lost control. She was hyperventilating, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. He tricked me. I thought he said he wanted a family. He said—" It was in that moment that Amelia, her voice quiet, but carrying across the stunned silence, spoke. "He didn't trick you, Clarissa. You tricked yourself." That was all it took. The quiet truth pushed the other woman over the edge. "You!" Clarissa shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Amelia. You poor pathetic. You planned this. You—" She lunged. With a guttural scream, she tried to get past the wooden railing, her hands clawed, aiming for Amelia's face. "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" The bailiffs were on her in an instant, grabbing her arms. She thrashed her $5,000 Chanel suit, completely rumpled her chignon, unraveling. "It's his! It's his!" She screamed, even as her eyes, wild with panic, told the truth. She knew it wasn't. And now the entire world knew it too. The courtroom was a vacuum, all sound, and air sucked out by Clarissa's primal scream and subsequent pathetic collapse. She was now a heap of ruined Chanel, held upright by two stone-faced bailiffs, her sobs the only sound. Marcus sat paralyzed, a breathing statue of a man, his empire and his ego shattered by the revelation of his children, followed by the revelation of her child. Mr. Blevin, sensing the legal blast radius, was already packing his movements, swift and silent, like a rat deserting a sinking ship. Judge Hayes looked at the scene with utter disdain. She waited for the bailiffs to get Clarissa settled back into the gallery, a prisoner now rather than a guest. "Well," the judge said, her voice a cold, sharp instrument, "this has been illuminating." She turned her full, unadulterated focus on Marcus. "Mr. Holloway, this court has heard more than enough. Your case is a shambles built on a foundation of malicious lies. Your petition for divorce on the grounds of infidelity is, needless to say, summarily denied. This court validates Mrs. Holloway's paternity test. The twins Leo and Luna are unequivocally yours. Your sworn affidavit, Exhibit A, is a fraudulent document. I am referring this matter, along with my full case notes and a transcript of this hearing, to the District Attorney's Office for immediate charges of felony perjury." Wait. The voice was quiet, but it sliced through the judge's ruling like a diamond. Everyone, the judge, the bailiffs, the weeping Clarissa, the catatonic Marcus, turned. Amelia Holloway was standing. Her hands were no longer trembling. Her face, tear-streaked and exhausted, was now set with a terrible cold clarity. "Your Honor," Amelia said, her voice gaining strength, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you are not done. You have found the truth about the twins. You have found the truth about her pregnancy." She flicked her hand toward Clarissa in a gesture of dismissal. "But you have not found the whole truth. You haven't found the real secret." Judge Hayes raised an eyebrow. This was unexpected. "Mrs. Holloway, I believe this court has sufficient grounds for judgment. Ms. DuPont's personal issues are not directly relevant to the dissolution of your marriage." "They are, Your Honor," Amelia insisted. "They are. Because it wasn't just about him." She pointed at Marcus. "And it wasn't just about me. It was about everything. His assets, his company. She wasn't just his mistress. She was a corporate spy, and she was about to steal his entire company. Not just from me. From him." Marcus slowly lifted his head. His eyes were blank, unfocused. What are you talking about, spy?" Clarissa's sobbing hitched. A new, sharp terror cut through her hysterics. No, she's lying. She's just trying to... Amelia ignored her and looked directly at Marcus, her gaze pitiless. You were so angry, so determined to destroy me. You froze my bank accounts. You cancelled my credit cards. You took my car. You left me with nothing. But in your all-consuming, arrogant rage, you forgot one simple little thing. She held up her phone. You forgot that I set up the family's cloud storage account 5 years ago. The one I pay $15 a month for from my old private account you didn't know about. And you forgot that when you gave her that brand new top-of-the-line iPad Pro, you signed her into our family account. Every note she took, every photo she saved, and every single iMessage she sent has been backing up to my cloud. For 6 months. The color which had been gone from Clarissa's face somehow drained even further. She looked physically ill. No, that's not possible. The backup was off. You only turned it off last week, Clarissa, Amelia said calmly, after the most important messages had already been saved. I was looking for old photos of Leo and Luna, and I found these. She turned the phone to the clerk. Your Honor, I present Exhibit C, a complete time-stamped log of messages between Clarissa DuPont and... Amelia paused, letting the name hang in the air. A Mr. Arthur Vance. If the previous revelations were explosions, this was a nuclear bomb. Marcus shot to his feet, his chair crashing backward. Vance! He roared. Arthur Vance. The name was venom in the Los Angeles business community. He was the head of Sloan & Pierce. He was Marcus's former partner, his bitterest rival, the man who had tried to stage a hostile takeover of Vanguard Developments 3 years prior. The man Marcus hated more than anyone on Earth. She's lying, Marcus yelled, his mind unable to process this. It's a fake she. She photoshopped it. Tell them, Clarissa. Tell them it's a lie. Clarissa was silent, her body rigid with terror. They're not faked, Marcus, Amelia said, her voice echoing in the stunned room. Let me read them for you. Let me read them for the court. She scrolled. October 30th, 8:15 p.m. From Clarissa to Arthur Vance. Problem. The idiot, that's you. Marcus just told me he's sterile. The doctor confirmed it today. The Amelia problem is solved, but our plan is dead. He'll never leave her for me if I can't give him an heir. All this work. For nothing. Marcus was shaking his head, a low, no, sound coming from his throat. Amelia continued. Reply from Arthur Vance. 8:17 p.m. Dead, don't be stupid, Clarissa. This isn't a problem. This is an opportunity. He's an arrogant fool. He wants a legacy more than he wants a wife. He'll believe in a miracle. You just need to provide one. Get it done. Amelia swiped. Clarissa to Arthur. 10:30 p.m. But how I can't just... I need to be... Sure. Who? Arthur to Clarissa. 10:31 p.m. It has to be mine. It secures the lineage. It keeps it in the family, so to speak. I'll book you a flight to Geneva. Meet me Friday. We'll solidify our partnership. Amelia looked up at Marcus. His face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. He looked as if he'd been shot. The infidelity was one thing, but this was a calculated biological conspiracy with his greatest enemy. And then, Amelia said, the best part. Just 2 weeks ago, Clarissa to Arthur. It worked. I'm pregnant. I told him. He's crying, Arthur, literally weeping. He's calling me his savior. He's pathetic. I almost feel sorry for him. Amelia paused, then read the final damning message. Arthur to Clarissa. Don't. Pity is for the weak. Now the real work begins. He's filing for divorce. Once you're married, you'll be on the board. we'll start moving assets to the new Shell Corp in the Caymans. Within 2 years, Vanguard is ours, and he'll be left holding his miracle baby. It was all there. The entire breathtakingly cynical plot, corporate espionage, a baby trap, a complete betrayal, not just of a wife, but of the fool who had replaced her. Clarissa finally broke. She lunged forward, grasping the wooden railing, her eyes wild. "No, he's lying. Arthur is he. He threatened me. He made me. He said he'd ruin my career. Marcus, baby, you have to believe me. I did it. I did it for us. He was going to... She was babbling, but it was far too late. Marcus Holloway stood perfectly still. The silence from him was more terrifying than his rage. He was shaking, not with fear, but with a new, volcanic and apocalyptic fury. He slowly, very slowly turned his head. He looked at Clarissa. He really saw her for the first time. Not as a prize, not as a victim, but as the architect of his total annihilation. "You," he whispered, his voice a low, strangled rasp. "You were going to give my company, my father's company, to Arthur Vance." His voice cracked on the name. The betrayal wasn't the sex. It wasn't the lie. It was the business. It was the legacy. "You were going to pass his bastard off as my son. Marcus, please." Clarissa wept, seeing the look in his eyes. "I love you. You bitch." He roared, a sound of pure, primal agony and rage. He lunged not at Amelia, not at the judge, but at her. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you both." The silence that fell over the courtroom was a living thing. It was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The text messages Amelia had read from her phone hung in the air, an indictment more powerful than any legal argument. Every person in the room, the judge, the clerks, the stunned bailiffs, was processing the sheer, layered audacity of the conspiracy. Marcus Holloway was not looking at Amelia. He was not looking at the judge. His entire being was focused on Clarissa. His face, which had been pale with panic, was now slowly suffused with a dark, venous crimson. His breathing was a low, ragged hiss. This was a betrayal he understood. This wasn't a matter of biology or love. This was business. This was a coup. Clarissa, on the other hand, was shrinking. The colour had drained from her face, leaving behind a waxy, terrifying pallor. She was staring at Amelia's phone as if it were a bomb. "No," she whispered, the sound barely audible. "No. She faked them. She faked those texts, just like she faked that junk science DNA test. She's a liar. Tell them, Marcus. Tell them." Amelia didn't flinch. She simply turned her phone to the clerk's desk. "I have the device logs, Your Honor. The cloud sync metadata with IP addresses and timestamps, all originating from Ms. DuPont's devices at the Holloway penthouse. She can't deny it. It's all here." This cold, factual statement seemed to sever the last thread holding Marcus's lawyer. Mr. Blevin, who had been frozen in a half-crouch, stood up, his face a mask of professional horror. He snapped his briefcase shut. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling with a lawyer's righteous fear. In light of this extraordinary and new information which my client, Mr. Holloway, clearly and maliciously withheld from his own counsel, I must formally move to withdraw as counsel effective immediately. I have been compromised. My firm has been compromised. We cannot be party to this level of multifaceted fraud." Judge Hayes didn't even blink. "Motion granted, Mr. Blevin. You are dismissed. I would strongly advise you to find your own counsel, as it is highly likely you will be called as a material witness in several upcoming investigations." Blevin looked at Marcus with undisguised contempt, then all but fled the courtroom, his expensive shoes clicking in a rapid, panicked retreat. Marcus Holloway was now in every conceivable way alone. He stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate, like an apex predator uncoiling. "You!" He growled, his voice a low vibration of pure hatred. He was still looking only at Clarissa. "You bitch," with Vance Arthur. "Vance, you let him. You were going to take my company, and give it to him." The sheer personal nature of the betrayal, his greatest business rival, had eclipsed everything else. Clarissa, seeing her last protector, was now her most immediate threat snapped. All the poise, the Chanel suit elegance vanished, replaced by a raw, gutter-level panic. "You deserved it," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You deserve it. You're a fool, Marcus. A weak, arrogant, pathetic fool. You lied to me. You used me. You told me you were sterile. You used me to get rid of her. You said we'd have everything. I am sterile." Marcus roared, then stopped his own words, trapping him. Clarissa laughed, a high, terrible, hysterical sound. "Exactly. You are. You knew it. You knew it for a year. And you let me get pregnant with... She choked on the words, unable to finish the confession. "With whose baby? Clarissa," Marcus bellowed, taking a step toward the gallery. "Whose is it? Is it Vance's? Is that it? You were going to pass Arthur Vance's bastard off as my heir. Enough!" Judge Hayes's voice was no longer a whip. It was a cannon. She slammed the gavel once, twice, 3 times, the crack, 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 echoing like gunshots. "This is not a soap opera. This is a court of law. And I have just heard confessions to multiple compounding felonies. Bailiff, secure Miss DuPont. She is a flight risk. Place her in custody." 2 large bailiffs moved instantly, pulling a suddenly unresisting Clarissa from the gallery. Her fight was gone. She was limp, sobbing her high-fashion armor, now just a rumpled, tear-stained costume. "No, please!" She wept as they put her hands behind her back. "It was Arthur. It was all Arthur. He made me. He's powerful. He threatened my career. He threatened me." Judge Hayes watched her face carved from stone. "Ms. DuPont, you had no career. You had a scheme. Take her away." Clarissa was led weeping through a side door. The heavy click of the lock seemed to seal her fate. The courtroom was silent again, save for the sound of Marcus Holloway's ragged breathing. Judge Hayes let the silence stretch. Then she fixed her gaze on him. "Mr. Holloway?" He turned dazed to the bench. "You are in one sense," the judge said, her voice a cold academic monotone, "the victim of a stunning and calculated betrayal. It seems Miss DuPont and your rival Mr. Vance were partners in more ways than one. You have every right, and I'm sure every inclination, to pursue civil damages against them, for what is by any measure a massive conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. The evidence provided by Mrs. Holloway will be invaluable to you in that pursuit." Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He saw a lifeline. He was the victim. "Yes, Your Honor, that's right. I am the victim here. I was blinded by her, did she? Do not!" The judge's voice snapped, cutting him off so sharply he flinched. "Interrupt me again. Because while you may be a victim, you are not the only victim. In this room, in this case, you are without question the perpetrator." Marcus's face fell. "Let us review," Judge Hayes said, lacing her fingers. "You petition this court for divorce, claiming infidelity. To support this claim, you submit a sworn affidavit, Exhibit A, a document you knew to be a lie. You committed a felony, right here, in my courtroom. You knew you were fertile when these twins were conceived. You knew your sterility was a recent development. You saw a convenient coincidence of biology, and you decided to weaponize it. She leaned forward. You tried to brand your wife, the mother of your newborn children, an adulterer. You gaslighted her for months. You isolated her. You terrorized her. You froze her assets. You left a woman who had just undergone a high-risk delivery of twins with $42. You did this not out of emotional distress, as your departed lawyer so pathetically claimed. You did this out of greed. You did this to avoid your most basic, fundamental human responsibility. She paused, her eyes boring into him. Your petition for divorce on the grounds of infidelity is denied. Your affidavit is hereby being referred to the district attorney's office. You will be charged with felony perjury. Do you understand me? Marcus could only nod his throat, working. Now, the judge continued, we turn to Mrs. Holloway's counter-petition. Mrs. Holloway. Amelia, who had been standing silently by her children, looked up. Your counter-petition for divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty, adultery, and attempted fraud is granted effective immediately. You are a free woman. Amelia closed her eyes, and one long, slow tear of pure relief rolled down her cheek. We move, the judge said, her voice hardening again, to the division of assets. The community property laws of California would normally dictate a 50-50 split. However, I am finding in this case that such a split would be a gross, unconscionable miscarriage of justice. The law allows for discretion in cases of egregious harm and the deliberate misappropriation of marital funds. Mr. Holloway, your actions, freezing your wife's assets while simultaneously spending, I assume, lavishly on your co-conspirator Miss DuPont, more than qualify. Therefore, she said, I am awarding Mrs. Holloway 70% of all liquid marital assets. This includes all bank accounts, all stocks, all bonds, and all pension funds. 70, Marcus roared, finding his voice. That's theft. That's punitive. You can't. It is punitive, Mr. Holloway, the judge thundered back. You used your immense wealth as a weapon to try and financially execute your wife and children. You don't get to complain about the blowback. Furthermore, I am awarding Mrs. Holloway the marital home in Pacific Palisades. You will vacate the premises by 5 p.m. today. I am awarding her the Mercedes G-Wagon and the Range Rover. You may keep your sports cars. You will need them to drive to your new, much smaller apartment. Marcus was shaking his head aghast. She did nothing for that money I built, that company. I built it all. You are correct, Mr. Holloway? The judge said, her voice becoming dangerously quiet. You did build it, and you were just about to let it be stolen by your most hated rival, all because you were blinded by your own pathological arrogance. You have proven yourself to be a reckless, impulsive, and catastrophic steward of your own legacy. She looked at him. Your children's financial future, their entire lives, cannot be tied to the whims of a man who would commit a felony to save a few dollars. Therefore, I am awarding Mrs. Holloway 50% of your controlling shares in Vanguard Developments to be held in trust for Leo and Luna Holloway until they are 25. The blood drained from Marcus's face. He understood. This was worse than 70%. This was the kill shot. You just lost control of your own company, Mr. Holloway. The judge stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Your ex-wife is now the single largest shareholder. She is for all intents and purposes your new boss. I trust she will have the good sense to call an emergency board meeting and have you removed. Marcus made a gagging sound and slumped in his chair, utterly broken. Finally, the judge said, we address the children you so cruelly called props and things. Mrs. Holloway is awarded full sole legal and physical custody of the twins Leo and Luna Holloway. Your behavior has been monstrous. You denied their existence. You are a clear and present danger to their emotional and physical well-being. Therefore, a permanent restraining order is in effect. You will stay 500 yards away from them and their mother. You will have no contact. If you wish to ever see your children, you will complete a 1-year psychiatric evaluation, 100 hours of court-mandated anger management, and 100 hours of advanced parenting classes. Then you may petition this court for a 30-minute supervised visit. And I assure you, Mr. Holloway, I will be reading that petition very, very closely. As for support, she concluded, you will pay $50,000 per month in child support and $20,000 per month in rehabilitative alimony for 5 years. You will pay for 100% of the children's health insurance and future education. You will also, of course, be paying all of Mrs. Holloway's legal fees, which, given that she is about to hire the best legal team in Los Angeles to countersue you and protect her new majority interest in Vanguard, will be substantial. Gavel, the judge said, rapping it once hard. We are adjourned. The room exploded. Reporters who had been held back burst in shouting questions. Mr. Holloway, is it true you're sterile? Marcus, did you commit perjury? Mr. Holloway, who is Arthur Vance. This finally broke Marcus Holloway. The humiliation, the loss, the utter destruction of his ego. It was too much. With a primal scream, he lunged not at Amelia but at the judge's bench. You can't, I'll have you disbarred. I'll ruin you, that's my company. 2 bailiffs tackled him before he'd taken 2 steps, slamming him face first onto the polished floor. He was restrained, a pathetic screaming, thrashing mess of rage and expensive wool. Amelia stood, her whole body trembling, with the adrenaline of a battle finally won. Her sister Chloe was openly sobbing with relief, her arms wrapped around Amelia's. It's over, Amelia whispered to her. It's really over. She calmly bent down, checking on the twins. Leo was just starting to wake up, his little fist waving. Luna was still fast asleep. She picked up her old worn manila envelope from the table. She looked at it, then tossed it into a nearby trash can. She didn't need it anymore. With her sister at her side, she pushed the stroller down the center aisle. She passed the spot where Clarissa had been, where the scent of expensive, panicked perfume still hung in the air. She passed the reporters who now turned their cameras and microphones on her. Mrs. Holloway, how do you feel? What will you do with the company? Amelia, you're the richest woman in L.A. She ignored them. She reached the back row where Marcus was being hauled to his feet by the bailiffs. His $20,000 watch cracked his suit, ripped his face, a mask of spittle and fury. Amelia! He screamed, his voice raw and desperate. He thrashed in the bailiff's grip. Amelia, please don't do this. They're my children. You need me. You can't run a company. Please, I built it. Amelia stopped. The entire room, even the reporters, went silent just to hear. She turned her back to the open doors, the flashing cameras of the press framing her like a bizarre, blinding halo. She looked at the man she once loved, the man who had tried to erase her. You're right, Marcus. I don't know how to run a company. But unlike you, I'm smart enough to hire people who do. And I'm smart enough to know a liar when I see one. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through every other sound in the room. You wanted to erase us, she said. You wanted us to be nothing. You wanted to be the only thing that mattered. She nodded at the bailiffs holding him, at the locked door where Clarissa had disappeared, at the empty chair where his lawyer had abandoned him. Now, she gestured to the stroller, are everything. We are the legacy. We are the company. We are the future. She held his gaze. And you are the nothing. She turned and pushed the stroller out into the hallway. She didn't run. She walked. Her sister was beside her. The faint squeak of the cheap stroller wheel was the only sound that followed her, until the grand oak doors swung shut, leaving the chaos, the flashing lights, and the broken man behind. Justice isn't always blind. Sometimes it sees every single sordid detail. Amelia Holloway walked out of that courtroom with her head held high, her children safe, and the future her husband tried to steal. Marcus lost his company, his reputation, and the family he threw away. And Clarissa. She lost her career, her lover, and her freedom, all for a lie that collapsed under the weight of its own greed. The judge didn't just expose one secret, she exposed their character or lack thereof. What do you think was the judge's ruling fair? Did Marcus and Clarissa get exactly what they deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of an underdog's ultimate victory, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see justice served, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more dramatic stories every single week. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you never miss an update.